and today I'm going to help you find new ways to tire out your dog so that you can do things with them other than just taking them for walks. A lot of the recommendations that I have revolve around actually using their daily meals in order to mentally tire them out. A lot of dogs do not get fulfilled by just taking simple walks. Our dogs in particular could take a walk, and if I don't ask anything of them, they'll come back just as energized as they were before. A lot of dogs need both physical and mental exercise in order to actually tire them out. One of the ways that we can do this is by using their daily meals in order to either play games with them or we can train with them, do different things with the food. I also want to add that I'm going to exclude specific toys. I will have my Amazon linked below, and I do have a lot of dog products on there that I recommend and that we use with our dogs. So some of the toys that we use are on that list. But for this video's sake, I'm not going to list out every toy. I'm just going to list the ones that, in my opinion, mentally tire out our dogs the most. So starting off strong, in my opinion, one of the best ways, or the best way possibly, to tire out your dog is to take their meal and just put it in a treat bag and then use their meal to train them to do something new. Our dogs have been almost completely trained by using just their kibble. Anytime I want to teach them anything new or anytime I want to proof a behavior, I use their kibble by just sticking it in a treat pouch. I can take it outside with me. I can use it indoors. And just about every skill that they know was taught with just their kibble. So that way you don't have to pack treats on top of the daily calories they're already getting. But in case you don't have a whole lot of time to be super hands-on with your dog, let's say maybe you work from home and you're stuck at a computer, or maybe like me, you have a baby and half the time you spend feeding them, and you have a hand free where you could do something with your dog, but you can't necessarily get up and do training sessions. You could also space out the session to where you reward them for good things throughout the day, and you ask different things of them throughout the day and reward them with their meals like that. But you could also just reward them for doing something you've already taught them. So a really good example, I think, is rewarding them for holding their place command, similar to what I'm doing in this video. They can go to their bed and stay there until we release them. It's a comfortable place for them to be. It's a safe place for them to be. And if your dog doesn't know the place command, I have a video here that I'll link where you can learn how to teach your dog place. If you're trying to get a really solid place command, one where they can hold it with distractions present, you're going to want to make sure that you build up duration by rewarding them anytime they are choosing to stay on the bed in command. So what that would look like is if you're stuck in a chair working on your computer, you could have the place bed down in the floor beside you. And if your dog doesn't know the command yet, you probably need to have them on a leash. That way you can keep them from going off of the bed and reinforcing breaking the command. But you can also have them off leash if they're a little better at it. And you can just periodically take some of their kibble and drop it down while you're working. That's a really good way to kind of work their brain, but it's also proofing a command. Another really good way to utilize their food is to use toys that are made specifically to hold their food. I also want to mention that these specific things can be really good if you're trying to crate train a dog, or if you're trying to get a dog maybe to be a little less anxious about things. I know especially with Shelby, she's a little more anxious. It can be a really good way to tire out your dog without having to be quite so hands-on. So here I'm going to start with just some of their kibble. I usually don't measure out a specific amount. I am getting what I think would be about enough for 2 of their toys and 2 of their lick mats since we have 2 dogs. These are Topples, and in my opinion, they are the easiest ones to clean because the top of them is just open like that. They do have a hole, and what I do to plug the hole, depending on what I have. If I have a strawberry, I'll try to find a strawberry that's that size, but I don't have any strawberries. So I'll usually try to stick 2 treats in there and then kind of line it with peanut butter, freeze that, and then I'll put the food in there and freeze that. So Topples, they're a great option. These are made by the brand Kong. They make several different interactive toys that you can use. I know they also make spray treats, like spray peanut butter and stuff that you can put in the little gaps. I don't hate this kind, and I still occasionally use it, and it is much harder for the dog to get their food out of here, but they are also just as hard to clean, so I'm not going to put any food in those today just because we don't really use them that much anymore unless I'm just really wanting to work the dog's brains. These are the original Kongs. They're probably the ones that you see a lot. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but ours are extremely worn out and they have bite marks and the tops are tore and they've been through a lot because we've used them a lot. The hole is also pretty small, so it's harder for the dogs to get the food out. I'm also not going to be filling these up today, but I do still use these much more than I use that kind of Kong. But these are a really great option. This is kind of their medium toy, I believe. They have a black one that is practically indestructible. I've never tried it, but it's supposed to be for heavy chewers. I feel fine about leaving all these toys out during the day. I don't worry that the dogs are going to be able to get pieces off and choke on them, or I don't think that they're going to be able to destroy them. And I feel pretty confident in that because I've left them out the entire time that we've had our dogs, and they've not been destroyed. Nothing's happened to them. So these are another option. They make all these toys in lots of different sizes. So you have lots of options as far as that goes. Something that I didn't mention about the Topple specifically, if you look on the inside, it has, I'm not sure if you can see it on camera, but it's got these little grooves in it, almost like a screw, because you can get these smaller Topples and kind of screw it in the top, and it makes it a harder little puzzle toy for your dog to do. So that's also an option. So if you think this is too easy for your dog, you can buy other Topples to stick down in there. The only con I will say is that the Topples tend to be more expensive than the Kongs, so you can keep that in mind, but I'll have everything linked on my Amazon storefront below so you can look at everything. Next one's one of my favorites. They're lick mats. These are much easier than any of those to clean. They have suction cups. I have used them a few times, like suction cup to the bathtub or something, just to try to help our dog's anxieties when I was counter conditioning them. The suction cups are not the greatest, so take that how you will, but I don't use them that much anyways. I use the lick mats probably more than any of these combined. You just can't put as much food on there. So that's really the only issue. I've used the lick mats with their kibble smushed up. I've also used it with some of their raw food before because they've been on a raw diet on and off. I've used it with yogurt and peanut butter and pumpkin puree and all sorts of things that are good for dogs. They're just really convenient, and I feel really confident about cleaning them because you can see all the parts. So there's nothing that you can't get to, you know, way back in the back or anything like that. They're super easy to clean, and in my opinion, I think if you're only going to buy one, maybe get some lick mats because they are fantastic. So now that we've got some different feeder toys, I'm going to kind of show you how to do this. So I've just got their dry kibble, right? And you're probably wondering, how do you freeze this? Well, what I like to do is I like to run just some water through our Keurig into a cup, so that way it's nice and hot, because the hotter the water is, the faster the kibble soaks the water up. Here I've just got some really hot water fresh out of the Keurig. I'm going to add the water to it, and then all I'm going to do is let it sit. You'll know when the kibble's done absorbing the water because it will expand dramatically in size. But also you should be able to smush it with a spoon or a fork. I usually like to use a fork just because I think it's a little bit easier. I sometimes also will add a little bit more water if I see that the mixture is just a little bit too dry. I like it to have just a little bit more water content because I think that makes it freeze better. And if it freezes better, then it's a little bit harder for the dog. I'll also add that even if you are not planning on using a feeder toy, it is very beneficial for dogs to have water added to their kibble. I know obviously if you're training with their kibble or something like that, you're not able to do that, and that's fine. But if you want to add water to their kibble, then it's actually really good for them, because dogs, they kind of live in a constant state of dehydration. They really only drink water when they feel like they absolutely have to. So adding that extra bit of water really helps with their water consumption after the kibble. So here is the kibble that we've been soaking in some water here. I'm not sure if you can actually tell on camera how much bigger the kibble has gotten, but we should be able to smush it up pretty easily now. And this is kind of the consistency. I don't know if you can see that or not. This is kind of the consistency that I like to go for. It looks like it's got lots of water in there. So here is their lick mats. All I'm going to do to get the food on there is literally just scoop it out here. Once you've got the amount of food on there that you want, you then just need to stick them in the freezer, and once they're froze solid, just give it to your dog. And then with the Topples, like I said, I usually plug it with just a couple of treats, and sometimes we'll put peanut butter in there just to kind of plug it a little bit better so none of the liquid gets out. And then all you do is just scoop it right into the top. I usually fill these topples to the top, but I didn't soak quite enough food, so I'll go and fill them back up later. But that is the general idea with a topple, is you just want to kind of fill it with food, and then you just want to stick it in the freezer, just like you do the lick mat, and when they're frozen, just give it to your dog. The next way you can tire out your dog doesn't involve food. It does involve toys, though. Now, of course, you can do standard things like fetch and tug, and doing things like that. But my goal really is to help you maybe find new ways you hadn't thought of before. I know there's at least 1,000 videos out there on playing fetch or tug with your dog, about using a flirt pole with your dog. I think all that's great. We utilize all those things. But the goal of this video is to maybe tell you some ways that you hadn't thought about, or maybe you hadn't heard about. One of those ways, in my opinion, really helps a dog tune in to its natural instincts to hunt. Now, these originally had filling in them. My goal whenever I get the dogs a stuffed animal is to let them absolutely demolish it. That may not be a popular opinion, but to me, I think if you give dogs an outlet to tear and rip and shred things, it decreases the likelihood that they're going to do that to other things. No, that doesn't work for all dogs. And if your dog is prone to swallowing parts of toys, then I definitely would not recommend doing this. Or if you do, managing the situation and being right on top of them the whole time, making sure they don't swallow anything. Our dogs have been really good about just ripping, shredding, and just throwing the cotton beside of them. So anytime we get them a stuffed animal, we expect for it to be absolutely demolished, because that's the goal whenever we get them a stuffed animal. We want to give them the stuffed animal and then let them absolutely go to town. That can be very tiring for dogs. It's also very exciting for them, because there's not a lot of opportunities dogs have where the humans just say, hey, you know what, you can tear this thing up. Another thing you can do if you don't have stuffed animals, or if you don't want to go and buy some, is you can use cardboard boxes that you get from things you order. You can do all sorts of things like that. You can have them shred up wrapping paper or anything else. As long as they're not swallowing it, you can have them shred whatever it is that you want them to. For us, they really like stuffed animals a lot. So every once in a while we go and get them a new stuffed animal, let them tear it up for the evening, or maybe for a couple evenings. And that stuffed animal usually is retired not too long after that, because we let them do whatever they want as long as they're not swallowing parts. Let's talk about some more really cool ways that you can use their kibble to tire them out. And I'd like to add that all of these things I'm going to mention today can actually be done inside. So it's also a really good way to tire your dog out if there's really bad weather and you can't go outside, or if you have other reasons why you can't go outside at that time, then all of these things are going to be able to be done inside. So that way you have something to tire them out even on the days when they're not able to go out as much. I mentioned puzzle toys, and this is just one that we have. It's just a cheap one, and they've used it quite a bit. I'm actually not sure where the rest of the little paws are, but you take these off and you put kibble in here. You hide the kibble under these little things, and then the dog has to kind of paw at it to get these things out to get to the kibble. Our dogs love this until they figured it out, and then Shelby would just start flipping the whole thing upside down. Either way, they've gotten the use out of it for sure, and it's been a really good way to help tire them out on top of doing other things. Another really great thing you can do is getting a snuffle mat. You can get these in the shape of almost anything. You can get them at almost any price point. I think we got this one at PetSense. You can search them on Amazon. They're all over the place. They have them in all different themes, all different shapes, sizes, and they're a really fun and easy way to let your dog use their nose in order to find their food. So you would take a little bit of their kibble and maybe hide it in some of the pockets or in these fries. These are always fun. And you could try hiding it all throughout the snuffle mat. And then your dog has to use their nose in order to kind of sniff out where their food's at. Our dogs really love this. In case you can't tell, it's super wore out. Snuffle mats are a really good option if you're looking for something they can do indoors that's not really high intensity on you. This next one is also a good option. Some dogs are better at it than others, so it may not get your dog quite exhausted. I know for our dogs, they really like it, but it's also really easy for them. This is called the snoop. So what you do is you pop out the center, kind of becomes a little gourd shape, and then you just take some of their food, put it in there, and then pop the center back in. Now the whole idea with this is that they kind of have to paw it around, and you can see a piece of kibble came out of this bottom hole. They kind of have to paw it around to get some of the kibble out, and it's a really good way for them to actually be active while they're eating, but without you having to actively play fetch with them or do something like that. This is a really good option for dogs that like kind of pawing around at stuff. Now I will say some dogs do better with it than others. I know one of our dogs, he prefers to just stick his whole nose in here and just eat out of it like a bowl. So for him, it's not really a great option. But for our other dog, she actually likes to kind of pick it up and then drop it, and a bunch of the kibble comes out. And it causes her to kind of have to run around the living room chasing kibble, which is nice because then she's a little bit more tired afterwards. So this is another option. It's called the Snoop, and I also have this one and everything I've said today linked below on my Amazon. This toy is called a Jolly Ball, I think, or a Jolly Roller, something like that. I'll link that one in my Amazon too. But you can play fetch or tug with this if you want. It's super sturdy. What I'm going to talk about though is the indoor use that we use it the most for. You want to take either some old washcloths, some old towels or clothes, and I've actually used an old t-shirt for this before and kind of cut it into little pieces. You can take some of their kibble and just put it in the washcloth or the t-shirt, whatever you've got, and then just roll it up. And from there, you can put it through the toy. I like to usually put it through quite a few times because our dogs, they go through this pretty fast if I don't. So that way, they not only have to rip and shred in order to get it out, which I've never had an issue with them actually shredding something that they pulled out, but it's more of the action that they have to do is like a ripping action. And then once they get it out, they then have to use their nose to get the kibble out of the cloth. So that's also a really good way to kind of play on your dog's natural instincts to rip and shred and use their nose. It's a really good toy, like I said, for fetch and tug. Overall, it's a really good option. And since it's soft, you can also use it indoors even to play fetch and tug. Next one I want to talk about is a little abstract, and I've not seen a lot of people do it. I think I've only ever seen one other person do it actually. These are actually his old cards, but you can actually teach your dog how to read flashcards. So what I did with Gunner is I put his commands on flashcards, and then I would hold up the flashcard and he would do the command. Obviously, the dog's not actually reading, they're memorizing this picture. So my goal is to make new, better flashcards and to completely reteach that. So I'm hoping to upload a tutorial on that at some point. Because it requires a lot of shaping. And if you don't know what shaping is, essentially it's just where you are letting the dog kind of figure out what they're going to do. And I actually plan to make a video about that. And it's kind of just relying on your dog to offer behaviors until they get to the right one. So that's a really good way to tire out your dog too, because anytime you're using any form of shaping, it's requiring your dog to use a lot more brain power than when you're trying to train them using a food lure or using other methods of teaching them. So this is also a really good way to tire out your dog indoors or outdoors. And another one of my favorite ways to use their food is actually utilizing a search command. So in our case, we will put them on their bed. I will hide their kibble in different spots all around the house, and then I will release them with, instead of the release word, usually I'll actually use the word search. It's the same command that we use for Gunner whenever he's tracking a deer, and all it is just to use your nose to find something. So if we haven't given them a smell ahead of time, like if I were to, for example, give them Chase's hat to smell so they could find Chase, then they already know that they're looking for either food, or in Gunner's case, he's looking for a deer. If your dog doesn't know a search command, that's fine. All you need to do is put your dog in a separate room with the door shut, and then you just want to hide the kibble everywhere and then let your dog out of that room. When a dog uses their nose, it's not only great for tiring them out, it's also really good for helping with anxieties and things like that. While we're talking about nose work, you can actually just take their kibble and maybe take some towels or something and kind of line the towels with the kibble, roll the towels up, tie them in a knot, whatever you want to do, and let your dog sniff out their food that way. Whenever I was conditioning them to the bathtub, I would line the entire bathtub with towels that were filled with kibble. And they got super comfortable super fast, because when dogs need to use their brain in that way in order to use their nose like that, they're really not able to focus on their anxiety. So pretty much anything where a dog has to use their nose is going to be super efficient at tiring them out, helping them with anxiety, and overall just helping them have a better day. Another really great way to tire out a dog is just taking them to a new environment. I know that that one is not quite as indoor friendly or not quite as easy, but if you take your dog to a new environment, chances are all the smells and the sights, the people, the dogs, everything, all the extra stimuli is going to be a really good way to tire out your dog a lot quicker. Especially if your dog already gets distracted by new places or new things, you could go to a new park with your dog, literally just sit in the grass with them and just help them to be calm around all those distractions. That's not only going to tire them out a lot faster, it's also going to be really good in the long run for getting them used to being in new environments. These are a lot of the different ways that we tire out our dogs, along with the general things like hiking and walking, running, playing fetch, playing tug. I hope this video was helpful to you. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know down below what your favorite thing is to tire out your dog, and if you have any suggestions on what we should add to our routine. Hope this helps. See you next time.